I think it's disrespectful to take that away from Brighton. To be fair,
Other news, by the way, 3-1 Bayern.
it was always going to happen, mate.
And now this will be definitely cut. Welcome back to the Lose to Win podcast with myself, Josh, and our guest co-host, Ben, this week. How are you doing, Ben?
Good evening, mate. I'm doing very well, thank you. How's you?
Yeah, very good. Well, less good because I was watching the Manchester United game. We're recording Champions League Wednesday night and
Not going quite so well.
2-0 down from what I can tell at the moment. So terrible, but we'll just keep the live chat on in the background. But otherwise, apart from that, I'm well. I mean, had a decent week, not too bad. Yeah. How about yourself? How's your week been?
Yeah, good. Busy at work, but on a weight. Are we talking weight now? Are we going straight into weight loss and how we're feeling diet wise?
Yeah, just generally, how are you doing? And I guess weight is part of that.
Yeah, good. I'm struggling a little bit with weight at the moment. I think a little bit like what you were talking about last week. I'm plateaued massively this season, and I'm up a little bit, down a little bit, up a little bit, down a little bit. I'm marginally down on what I started the season at, basically. So, struggling a bit, but I'm in a good place. I've lost quite a bit of weight overall, so I don't ever beat myself up about it. There's more I'd like to lose, but sometimes we go through periods where it doesn't come off quite so easily. So no, I'm in a good place. Yeah, good place. Looking forward to this next game week, but sadly I'm not going to be there.
Oh no.
Which I'm quite
Super Blues
about.
Are missing their captain.
Yeah, God. But Big Ollie's in charge. He's an excellent vice. So he'll be bringing the Blues out onto the pitch on Friday night for a good whopping of the Greens.
Well, best of luck to you. Yeah, it's funny you should say about you've plateaued this season, because I've done worse than that. Dare I say it, this year, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I've had a really poor season. I've been here 3 seasons now, or this is my 3rd season. Now, the first 2 were pretty steady, about a stone, about 7 odd kilos or something a season, which is fine,
Yeah, brilliant.
And then this season, last week, I have the tragedy of giving you the news that I actually got an own goal, and we're 11 weeks into the season. So it was a ridiculous week.
Was that last week?
Yeah, this last week. So something like 1.5 on or something, which was a bit surprising, not going to lie. But
do you know what happened?
Well, I think mainly I've just been snacking too much, or not keeping track of my calories quite as well as I thought I was.
Secret calories, mate.
Exactly, back to what we were discussing. Yeah. So this week I've been much more. I've actually been. What I said to Steve. So I said this last week when I was there. I had kind of entered it thinking I didn't want to be super. I didn't want to track the calories so specifically, because while, okay, as you say about secret calories, and that's a real problem, and clearly in my case that's a problem, it was more about making sure that what I did was sustainable 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line.
Yeah.
I don't want to still be logging my food diary and calories for everything I do in 10 years' time, when I've hopefully got the weight off and I've had it off for a long time, So I want to do it without having to be so fastidious in that and doing it just because then I don't feel like I'll keep doing it. So if I did track it now really closely, I'd lose the weight. I'd do better. I know it would. I'm sure I would.
Yeah.
But then if I got to the end of it and I got to where I wanted to be, the incentive to keep it going, and whether I would be keeping it going in several years' time, is I'm not certain I would be. So then it's a case of not doing it then is probably likely meaning I'm more likely to put it back on, because I'm not keeping up to date with it. So that was my line of thinking. This week I have actually started properly counting it, and it's been pretty steady, according to a steady loss. So
and you think
and it's been much easier. Yeah, I'll be down, I'm sure, and it's much, and that's much easier. It's
I
mainly
think,
just making sure I hit a target and I go, okay, well I can't do this anymore, so I can't have this or I can't do that. So
yeah,
that's been
I think what
better.
you're saying is, I think the best way to do it probably is to use your tracking until you hit your what you would class as your target weight overall. And once you've hit that, then kind of step away from it and try and see if it has become habitual and that you're used to doing it that way. If it starts to go back on again, then you can always go back to it. But I think it's probably quite a good idea to keep at it until you get to where your target weight is, because then you'll be able to judge it better.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
yeah.
I know
Fair
that's
enough.
difficult to do if you're looking at losing like 5 stone or something, because obviously it's relentless, and we all know that sometimes you do need to step away from it for your own mental health, really. But I think probably sticking at it until you get to a comfortable place. And I think that's kind of where I've had a bit of a problem, actually, because I got to a point where I was comfortable and I'd lost quite a lot of weight and I was quite happy with what I'd done. Of course, there's more I want to lose, but I think because you kind of get a little bit complacent in thinking I've managed to do it, I'm quite happy now.
Mm.
And then those little things, as you say, do start to creep back in, and you don't really realise it. You have a little bit of extra chocolate or a biscuit here or something there that you shouldn't really have, but you go, oh, it's all right, it's all right, I've lost loads of weight, it's not going to go piling back on.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a psychological thing. Yeah,
I think
interesting.
it's just strange what I was just trying to work out what I did differently in the first couple of seasons to what I've done this season.
Do
I
you keep
think
it in a book? Do you use your
yeah,
diary, or do you
yes
do
I
it
do. So
electronically?
I write it down, but I never
Have you
track the
kept them all?
calories. So
Right,
I've still
right.
got it. I've still got the full book, all pages that I've used. And
Yeah,
so I need to go back and look through because I haven't actually done
yeah,
that, to be honest. But it there I think really for me it was a case of it's just the small snacky things.
yeah,
This isn't an excuse and it never should be, and I know it's one that people have all the time, but my schedule's changed quite a bit in this last season. The first 2 seasons it was pretty consistent.
mm-hmm.
It's funny actually. We've introduced the podcast, and all of a sudden, my schedule has changed. But arguably, it just keeps me busy. Which is a good thing. It's
Yeah,
more just that it's been a bit more erratic, so I haven't found the same kind of time that I would normally do in evenings, and it's not predictable. And
yeah,
because it's not quite so predictable, it then means that I might have planned out a week full of healthy-ish meals and going to cook XYZ, but when I actually come to it, I realize, oh wait, I don't have time for this now, so I've got to do
yeah,
something else quickly. It's
yeah,
like 9:30 and I've barely eaten at all today in the evening.
yeah,
Got to think about going to bed at some point, so and I don't want to eat
yeah.
too late, so it just changes. So it's not an excuse, but it's just one that's probably
It's a
my
common
biggest
thing, mate.
change this season.
It's a common thing now for everybody, isn't it? We all have really busy lifestyles, and making sure we do eat the right things at the right times is part of the battle.
Yeah.
You know, people who spend a lot of time on the road. I know Jack, for example, struggles when he spends a lot of time on the road. So he's in hotels a lot, or he's in service stations a lot, and it's difficult sometimes when you're in a rush. You literally the only food you can grab is fast food or a sandwich from M&S or whatever, and that's not necessarily the right thing at the right time. But when you're in those situations, it's difficult. And if you're away for a few days at a time, you can't forward plan. You can't take a load of different meals with you. So it's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough. So don't beat yourself up, mate. Don't beat
I
yourself up.
know. I don't think I've been too hard on myself, but that's potentially part of the issue. I'm not saying I
Yeah.
should be,
Oh, okay.
but I just think it's more. I have been more complacent, probably. I've been more settled in the community, in the league.
Yeah.
I've been,
Yeah.
and I've just lost it very slightly, just small little things here and there, and it's added up.
Do you think it's got anything to do with your team? Do you think it's got anything to do with the team and the way your team is performing this season?
I don't, maybe subconsciously, but I don't ever see that as I don't ever look at it and think, it doesn't change my mind, I don't ever look and go, oh, this week's a write-off because we're missing loads of players, therefore it's okay,
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what I weigh. That's not how I see it at all, because I'm always looking at my own journey. I always say about the team, it's about the weight loss as a group, and I'm not too worried about the pitch score. And so when we go in and say have forfeits, I'm just there to play some fun football. I'm not massively worried about that.
Yeah.
I guess there's a little bit of subconscious thing where you go, oh, well, we're missing half the team, so we can't really win this week. So does it matter that
well,
I
that will
hit
play
a hat
small
trick
part.
or, it's just...
Yeah, we'll play a part, mate. I think because once you've got the group, if you've got a group that's consistently turning up and everyone seems to be losing weight, it breeds kind of that kind of mentality amongst everybody, and everyone goes, oh, you start to think subconsciously, oh, they're losing weight, they're doing really well, I need to buck my ideas up, I need to do this, I need to do that. And if you don't have those pressures, it'll have a slightly negative effect, possibly. I don't know. I'm speculating.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we both said last week, wasn't it? I mean, I was saying about when I was in the Yellows the year before, and we'll come to this a little bit in the roundup in a second, but the consistency of which everyone turned up and tried to lose weight. At first, it was a little rocky the first 2 weeks of the season, and then we kind of got it together because everyone, I don't know what it was, everyone was always there. So even though the first 2 games were a bit poor, we got together and, and things turned around quite quickly and we won the weight loss league,
Yeah.
In big part to 2 or 3 particular players, and I wasn't one of them, but I was still pretty consistent and I was always there. So, and I was still losing weight, 5 out of 6 weeks, for example.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, how did we get on last week then? Go on, let's have a roundup of what happened last week. We can talk about our game if you want. It's a good game.
Yes, we'll get there in a second because the league underwent kind of a bout of cup fever this last week, didn't it, really? So it's round 1. So all 6 teams, well, 5.5, I guess, have something to play for again after the regular season came to an end. So 2 matches were decided on the scales, with the other settled by, well, Steve said, Woody Allen's maxim that 95% of success is showing up. Back to what we were saying and what you said last week about the Blues. Yellows enjoyed a healthy 3-0 pitch win. And with a highly respectable 9 bonus goals, they must have thought they'd done enough.
Yeah, that's a good score.
The Reds had other ideas. So with 2 milestones and a hat-trick tipping the scales their way, they squeezed through by a single goal.
Sneaky Reds.
Winning by 13-12. So well done to them.
1 goal, fair play.
Yeah. Whites and Greens evenly shared 8 goals on the pitch, but all 6 Greens lost weight, whereas with the Whites, even with a milestone to their name, were undone by 3 own goals this week, eventually losing 12-10. And then on to our game. So your league champions Blues were awarded a pitch walkover, weren't they, against us, the Blacks, who only had 3 of our own players actually show on the day, just due to circumstance. And Blues, obviously, you added another 11 weight-related goals for a healthy boost to the goal difference. It ended in a bit of a ridiculous 16-1 victory. But I will say a shout out to our team because of the 3 people, so we only had 3 people turn up, for which I count myself among them. But despite only having 3 players on duty, we still lost more weight than any other team this week.
Incredible. So that was Luke and
Connor. Yeah.
Well done,
so,
lads.
I was going to say, because I got a goal, so they basically, just the 2 of them, lost more weight than on their own than any other team. So it was fantastic. The way the cup works, the defeat in the first week doesn't end your chances of lifting the trophy. But if this week has shown us anything, it's that you have to commit all through the week and bring your off-pitch game along with your on-pitch one.
Absolutely.
We had a good game, though, didn't we, on the pitch?
We did.
So,
we did. It was a cracking match. I've got a few bruises to prove that we did.
Yeah, actually, it was a little physical. I'm sorry, I had you on the floor, didn't I, at one point?
That's all right. Yeah. Tim gave me a good kick in, like he said he was going to. So I got a nice little bruise on my foot from Tim. We had a little clash.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm sorry, Ben. I thought I got the ball and I didn't really feel anything. I know that sounds bad, but I felt
I just went bouncing off you.
You just fell on the floor, and then I thought it was innocuous. It was because there was no pain or anything for me.
No. Do you know what it was, mate? I think it was our legs locked, and I kind of went backwards, and then I could have twisted my back. That was what kind of hurt. My leg was okay, but my back, I twisted my back a little bit. Mate, it wasn't your fault. It's perfect. 50-50, no problem. No problem with it at all.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I haven't got to back issues just yet. So,
you'll get there,
but with
mate,
the weight I've had, I know that's always a fear of mine. I must
But it was a
admit.
good game. It was a good game. I always enjoyed putting a couple past Ryan as well. Bless him.
Yeah, he is not thrilled.
He loves it. Love you, Rye.
Yeah. He did say to me, Tom didn't manage to put one past him this week, which is
No,
quite rare.
that's true. Yeah, that's
I think
true.
he was saying.
Tom's scored a few worldies past him, hasn't he? But,
yeah, especially when he ringers, it seems.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's
yeah.
It was a good game though. Especially, I know it's silly, but because it was a pitch forfeit, there's an element of just like you're just having fun. Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're just having fun.
Yeah,
and I think that really helps the game because I think
definitely. Everyone lets their hair down. It's not, it's a bit of fun. You can have a bit more
Yeah.
freedom. We tried a different style of play. Actually, we set ourselves up slightly differently. Gave Victor a bit more freedom, and Tom, and put 2 up top, and it actually worked quite well. To be fair.
Yeah. What was the score? Is it 4-3 or something like that on the pitch in the end?
4-2. I think it was 4-2 on the pitch.
Not that it mattered too much.
No,
Was it? Did we only score 2 then? Or did you lose 4-2? I'm trying to remember.
No, we won 4-2. I got 2. Victor got 1. Billy got 1.
Did I only score the only
you
2?
You scored
then?
a worldie, mate. You scored an absolute worldie. You went running through the pitch, went past about 3 players, and then buried it.
Yeah, I was a bit lucky. I was falling over, so I just took the toe at it, and it went between the keeper's legs.
Oh, mate, it was corker. And Jack scored one. He scored one off Georgie. He was Georgie, bless him. The ball was going all over the place. He was going, "Whoa, that ball's moving all over the place!" And he kind of should have saved it probably, but it was a decent goal from distance for Jackie.
Must have
boy.
been 4-3 then, because I'm pretty.
Did you
certain
get 2?
I scored
Did you?
twice.
Oh, fair play
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
So 4-3. Yeah, fair play.
Yeah. But not that it mattered. It was a 5-0 loss in the end, so it ended up 16-1. So that's how it is. But milestones this week then.
Go on.
Speaking of 4s, so we had 4 milestones this week. The most in a single season or all season, probably. I don't know. Phil and Barnaby made their first steps into the milestones, earning their 5% certificates.
Well done,
Tom
boys.
continues to have a great season by claiming his 10%, while Ollie joins the select 15% club.
Yes, super Ollie. Well done, mate. Yeah, amazing.
And well done to all the milestone men so far.
Yeah,
we
fantastic.
also had.
Is that the most? Did you say that's the most milestones in a season that we've hit this season?
In a week, sorry, this all season. In a single week all season.
Yeah, sorry, with you.
It might be the most in a season. I don't know. We'll have to ask.
It'd be interesting to find that out, actually. Yeah. There seems to have been a lot this season.
Yeah, I heard, by the way, a sneaky rumor. I meant to ask this last week, that you are like lining up your what's the milestones as a team? You like plan when you're going to hit milestones. I will
tell you what. No, it's impossible. You can't. You can try. I mean, you can try. I will tell you one little bit of inside information. Ollie could probably have hit his 15% on our last league game week. But he purposefully didn't because he was so close to it. He didn't want to waste his 15% on
so you are doing some
rubber.
trickery.
Well, I mean, there's nothing in the rules to say that you can't do that. At the end of the day, he's still losing weight.
I'm just teasing, yeah, exactly.
And there are plenty of people who've done that before, trust me.
And as we'll come to it, Ollie is much deserving anyway. So,
absolutely.
All 7 last man standing survived and scored a goal, Ollie among them. So although Dan was on holiday, so he needed his grace week, Ollie is now the only remaining player with an unused grace week.
He is, yeah.
So outstanding. Luke actually leads the all-new team of the week.
Brilliant.
With a stunning 3.2 kilos lost for the mighty Super Blacks.
Wow.
That puts him top, and then behind him we have Phil, who lost 2.4, Connor from the Blacks, who lost 2.2, Jesus, who lost 2.1, Rich lost 1.7, Barnaby lost 1.4, Tom lost 1.3, and Greg lost 1.3.
Amazing.
So very well done, everyone.
Yeah, really good. Fantastic.
Yeah. Finally, this week, with great fondness, our club says goodbye to Abood, who is moving to London to pursue his studies. I don't think it's unfair to say that he had a bit of a nervy start with the club. I don't think he'll mind that, and I'm sure he's listening. But the confidence has grown on and off the pitch massively in the last few weeks, especially. And he's been a real asset to the club. So we're all sorry to see him go. I hope you're listening, Abood, and wish you all the best. There is, I'm sure, a Man v Fat Club in London who are going to be very lucky to get you. Well, he might have done already, and good on him.
I think he said he has. I spoke to him briefly last week. Yeah, good luck, mate. I hope you have a great time.
Absolute best of luck, mate. And don't be a stranger as well. Whenever you're down, we'll get you involved
Come
in the
see
game.
us. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Definitely.
As for the rest of us, we've lost just under 160 kilos this season. With 3 weeks,
aren't we?
yeah, no, with 3 weeks to go, the mythical 200 kilos is still possible. So, but we need to up our game to get there. So
40 kilos to get rid of.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's doable, isn't it? 3 weeks. Yeah. Do you know what the kicker is? Always the last week. The last week's always the kicker, because ultimately, when it comes down to the cup final, there's only really 2 teams that really push in that last week, and that's the 2 that are in the cup final. The other 4, they can quite often kind of go, oh, do you know what? We're not really playing for anything this week, so just slack off a little bit.
Yeah, but is that also then when you get to start weight for the season after, it gives you a bit of a buffer, or is that not? Because it's always last week of the season.
Well,
anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's what can happen. So your last weigh-in is your starting weight for the following season. So if you're not, and this is where it's a bit of an interesting one, because if you're not really playing for anything in that last week, your mentality can say, well, my start weight is going to be what I weigh in at. So if I have a bit of a week where I put an extra kilo on, that's actually going to benefit me next season, because it'll be easier to lose a little bit of weight. So psychologically, you can kind of understand it, but of course you're cheating yourself, because ultimately the goal is to lose as much weight as you possibly can. So if you're in it for that reason, you're in it for those reasons, then of course you'll continue to try and successfully lose some weight. But if you are trying to be a little bit tactical, that week can be difficult, and I think that's often where we fell down actually on overall weight loss in the season, because that last week, 4 of the teams have kind of slackened off a little bit. I'm not saying everyone does that, of course, but there is. I remember quite infamously, Dan said at the end of one season, it was quite early on, I'm not sure if you were around at the time, but he said in the chat, why does every other team get a week off when we have to keep playing for the cup final, because they were in the cup final? And he saw it as like it came across as like the a punishment that he was in the cup final and couldn't have a week off. Bless him. I think he's changed his attitude. Bless him. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, as a team that's not really playing for anything in the cups in that final week, you can afford to have kind of a week off and it not affect you. But that's not really why we're doing it. That's not what you're supposed to do. But it is something that does happen. So let's keep going, boys. Let's try and do it. 40 kilos between us over the next 3 weeks. That's doable, isn't it? 10 kilo a week.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Oh, and I've just seen it's 2-1 Bayern Munich. Rasmus Højlund, game on.
Oh, Højlund's
sorry,
up.
just to start. I'll probably have to cut this in the pod, but
Arsenal up to 5-0.
No.
Oh no, they're not. That's my eyes, mate. 3-0.
Yeah, 3-0.
I haven't got my glasses on.
Yeah, it's a good thing you don't need it for a pod, isn't it?
Yeah, quite.
Anyway, shall we move on to some football? Is there anything else you want to cover from the Man v Fat? I was just going to go into some weekend narratives or things that come up after the games. We usually we run through the results, in particular the Premier League. I know that's not your focus, Ben.
That's okay. I'm happy to talk about it.
It is unfortunately the biggest league in the world, or fortunately, however you look at it. And it's one of these things where I didn't want to focus on the results per se as the narratives of certain clubs around those. So the first one, and this is a game I actually went to. I was lucky enough to get some last minute ticket to go and see Bournemouth-Chelsea.
Nice.
Which was actually a very entertaining 0-0 draw. And the narrative around it really actually, I think, is coming out of it is how Chelsea should be beating Bournemouth just comfortably. And I think that's pretty unfair on Bournemouth. Firstly, I think Bournemouth could have won it the last 15, 20 minutes or so, all over Chelsea. But the whole narrative is around, Chelsea are poor and Bournemouth, everyone should be beating Bournemouth, even at Dean Court. And it's like, and obviously as a Bournemouth fan, I'm biased, but I don't see that at all. And I think it's pretty unfair in Bournemouth. I also think that's a historical thing. Chelsea are just a big club, therefore they should be beating Bournemouth. I don't know what you think, but
well, we were talking about it briefly before, weren't we? And I think you're absolutely right. I think unfortunately, when you've got the so-called bigger clubs it is historical, and it all comes from the Chelsea era, the Abramovich era, where he rebuilt the club and they suddenly became one of the best, richest clubs in the world, and they were winning things left, right, and centre, and had the best players, the best managers, etc., etc. But you're right, that is historical. They've gone through a huge change over the last few years, and they are in transition. So you've got a whole new raft of players have just come in at the top of this season, and Pochettino's trying to sort of find his best formation, his best team, his best players. So they're not really at the top of their game at the moment at all.
No, but I think for me it's, and I know this is a Bournemouth focus, but I find it just a little disrespectful to the side. I know Bournemouth aren't a big club in comparison, but the new owner has definitely put his money where his mouth is, and really tried to set a plan in place, and have actually, Bournemouth have been decent spenders over the last couple of windows, and really, and also Bournemouth haven't even got some of their new signings in actually on the pitch yet. Think about Alex Scott and Tyler Adams and that, they're not even on the pitch, and so I think there's an element of that squad's actually quite good now. The squad's actually, it's young, it's vibrant. There's and I think especially with Iriola and the way he wants to play, I think they can cause teams a lot of issues. And I think we saw that against Chelsea, and I don't think that was an unfair result.
I think the best way to look at it, it's good to be an underdog, because they can go about their business under the radar, and people won't rate them. Do you know what I mean? And that's a good way to go about your business in the Premier League, because if the focus isn't on you, you can sort of take your time, do what you need to do, get your tactics right, get your formation right, get your players right, and no one really pays much mind and goes, do you know what? They're not going to win anyway. So it's quite nice to be in that position, because you can then go and do those performances, and the performances and the players they'll create their own kind of confidence around themselves, and they'll be okay. Do you know what I mean? The problem with clubs like Bournemouth, Forest, there's plenty of them down there in it, Luton. A lot of people would argue that a successful season for them is to stay in the Premier League. But Bournemouth are now in a position where actually no, that they've kind of done that. They've done the yo-yoing bit. They went down, they came back up again. They're now quite established. And so while it would seem that people are being slightly disrespectful to the smaller clubs, they'll be okay with that. It's the same principle around Brentford. Brentford have...
I was going to say about Brentford, they're a classic example of this, I think. Yeah, almost so.
Brilliant example. They play really, really good football. And yes, a few people have taken notice of that, but they're another club that's a smallish club that's come up through the ranks over the last few years, but their club has been run so well, like we were talking about before, that, they've got everything in place to be sustainable and be a successful club. And they're getting it right, and they're showing that on the pitch now, and people are starting to stand up and take notice. And the same thing will happen around Bournemouth. I think you'll always get that when the smaller clubs play the big, so-called big six or whatever. You always get that kind of little bit of disrespect, but that's a good thing. I think it's the kind of David to step up to the plate and go, do you know what? We can beat these boys. We can stand toe to toe with them, and quite frankly, make them look fairly average. I think you're right. I think Bournemouth made what is supposed to be a really good Chelsea side look pretty average.
Well, so, that's what I was going to say. Ultimately, I don't know if it was Chelsea being poor. I think Bournemouth made them look that way in places.
Yeah, definitely.
I think people just assume that people like Chelsea play down to a level that people think Bournemouth are at. Yeah. Whereas actually, I think it's the other way around. I think Bournemouth are playing up to a level in places that they expect someone like Chelsea to be at. So at least I think it's more that way this season. Yeah. Anyway, I'd agree with other news, by the way, 3-1 Bayern. So
3-1. Who scored? Wasn't Kane, was it?
Harry Kane, penalty. It was given apparently from a handball that was headed onto Christian Eriksen's arm from about a yard away.
Oh, dear.
So, oh well. I know this will be
was always going to happen, mate.
So anyway, speaking of Man United, 3-1 loss to Brighton. I think the narrative around this is that Man United is just really poor, and that results are
See, I don't agree with that
terrible.
either. I think Brighton are unbelievable. They're playing fantastic football at the moment. I think it's disrespectful to take that away from Brighton.
Yeah, exactly, and I would agree with that as well.
Yeah,
not just because I want to save face as a Man United fan. It's just a case of I genuinely actually don't think Man United were the best team for the first half an hour, and then they got sucker punched for a goal, and then the game changed and Brighton controlled it. But that's the brilliance of Brighton. I know something didn't work for Man United, but I think there's the real narrative I keep seeing is how Ten Hag is out of his depth and blah, 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 and you should be, and I'm already seeing people about saying Ten Hag should go, and I'm just like, oh.
See, that's bonkers.
Right? Yeah, I know. It's just insane.
Again, they're another club though, aren't they? United are another club where they are still really in a transitional period. They're trying to get stability in the club, and I know there's all the problem around the ownership with the Glazers, etc., etc. But that seems to be kind of settling down.
Well, they need to go. I mean, they treat the club so poorly. But at the same time, I'm not one of those fans who just points the finger at the Glazers all the time. Yeah. I think that's unfair as well. Because ultimately, as a biggest commercial club, they've got money still. Even if Glazers, even if it isn't Glazers' money, it's money the club has earned through sponsorship or shirt sales or whatever. So, and they're spending the money. It's not like they're not spending the money. So,
but they've been absolutely rife with injuries, right? The first team's decimated by injury at the moment.
Yeah, 12 first team players out at the moment.
See, that's nuts. And you've got all the kind of political stuff around it as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a host of problems.
Yeah.
Apart from the on-field stuff, they're missing Mount, Amrabat, Shaw, Varane, all these places. They've got no right wingers, so they have to play Fernandes out of right wing. And that's the whole part of missing 12 first team players. Yeah. Now, this shouldn't be a massive excuse because they should have the squad, but their squad is a bit threadbare and they needed clearing out and changing for a while. And they're in the middle of trying to do that. So
that's right.
There's an element of this.
So to get rid of him now would be a bit of an error.
It's a project. It's patience. I mean, just think about it. It's patience. There's just no patience in football, is there at all?
Did the big clubs have that? Do they have that though? Are they allowed that time?
Well, that's the problem. I think Pochettino alluded to this about Chelsea. It's a bit like, well, he's a kind of project manager as such. He's the kind of person who you get in there for years and he builds the team slowly. Yeah. But Chelsea have historically not done that. And so the fans are so used to the success and the board are that he's not going to get it. He just says, well, we have to win now, even if it's a project. And it's the same with Man United. They have to win now, even if it's a project, because otherwise... Yeah,
those big teams, they have that real pressure, don't they?
I mean, Man United's, in terms of on-field, Man United had 17 clean sheets last season. Yeah. They conceded the third least amount of goals, 43, and 17 of those were in 3 games. City, Liverpool and Brentford. So that's 26 in the remaining 35 games.
Yeah, that's not bad,
that's a good defence last season. Attacking was the problem, though. They had one more shot on target than Man City last year, but scored 36 less than them. And they only scored 3 more goals than 10th place Fulham. Sorry, Steve. So, it's putting the ball in the back of net, and they've just only got a striker in. Yes, he's expensive, but he's raw and he's young. Is the kind of thing that Man United used to do all the time, buy raw young players. Yeah. And of course, it's going to take time. And as we've said, they've got chopping and changing all the time because half the people he's bought in haven't played. So, and half of them are missing.
Yeah, that's tough.
So it's just a narrative around Man United. I actually don't think they've been as poor as people say. It's a project, patience. They had a really good season actually last year. 2 cup finals, winning one of them and a top 4 finish, considering where they were the season before. That's good.
I think that might be why, though, if you think about it, because they did have a fairly good season last season. I think that's why people United fans are frustrated this season.
It's always
because
the next level.
Hit the ground running. Yeah, because he had the window to get a few players in, and they missed a couple of targets. And as soon as that happens, people are like, well, why don't these players want to come here? Blah blah blah. You can throw the Saudi thing into that with players leaving left, right and centre for ridiculous amounts of money. So, but then you can kind of go, well, hang on a minute. He's had a window. He's had the opportunity to get his kind of set out his stall, so to speak, and it's not quite worked just yet. I still think we're only, we're 6 games in? 6 games are we in?
Yeah, I don't honestly can't remember. Yeah, I mean, anyway, I think there's only one set of fans on the entire planet. Really? Well, okay, we'll talk European football here. who probably don't sit there and go, "What's the next level?" And that's Man City, because they've just won a treble. And it's like, well, there you go. So what's the next level? And I think for most of you, imagine if Arsenal won the Premier League last year, they'd be thinking, "What's the next level? Champions League."
Yeah.
And it's just like, so it's how it is. And then another thing we were talking about, under pressure in projects, by the way, moving on to Newcastle.
Yeah.
Media-led drivel about Eddie Howe being under pressure.
Yeah.
Which
madness.
I genuinely is media-led, because
Completely.
I've seen multiple articles about it over the last week and a half.
Yeah.
It's obviously subsided slightly since the 1-0 win against Brentford, but I just think it's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. It's part of the whole thing about media getting managers sacked, and people were saying, because...
But this is around money again, isn't it? This is because Newcastle was bought by, hugely wealthy people, so that automatic response is, well, then they're just going to pile money into the club, and now they're going to be a massive club again, and they should be winning everything.
But they haven't. They have put money in, but they've done it smartly.
Yeah, totally. They haven't gone bonkers.
And they've bought young players.
And you've got to trust Eddie Howe. I mean, he is top. He is top. I tip him greatly for the next England job, to be fair.
Well, everyone
Eddie
does.
Howe, absolutely. Yeah. So, you can't say that in one hand and then say, oh, he's under pressure at Newcastle in the other. It's utterly ridiculous. He's either a good manager or he isn't. And he clearly is a good manager. And it's clearly a project there, and he's doing all of the right things. I mean, they went away to Milan last night and got a 0-0 draw. I mean, there aren't many clubs that were going to go and do that. So fair play to him. I don't think many people see him as getting out of that group in the Champions League. So, they're kind of freebies for them. It's the first time they've been in the Champions League for God knows how many years. So go and enjoy it.
Yeah, the reason why I say it's media driven, though, is because I actually don't know. Okay, I only know a couple of Newcastle fans, really, but the general thing I see online for Newcastle fans is that they're just happy to be there, not just Champions League, but where they are in the league and where they were last season. They're not expecting to repeat top four again, most of them.
No.
So this is why I'm saying it's media driven about Eddie Howe being under pressure, because the fans don't believe that, and everything I've read about the owners are really going to be very patient with it. So at least that's what you hear out of the club. So it's literally only things like the BBC writing an article that literally says Eddie Howe eases pressure with 1-0 win over Brentford. It's like, what pressure? You mean the pressure you're saying that he's under because you want, so that's what annoys me about that one.
Well, the media drive narratives around so many things, they polarize on so many options, so many things, and we could go into all sorts of things, but certainly won't get into politics. But of course, it's all they drive a narrative and expect people to respond to it. So how do you stop that? How do you? I don't know. Well, you can't, can you? Really, you just have to kind of use your own brain and try and be a bit careful about what media sources you choose and what you choose to believe in. I think you just got to hope that the sensible person goes, well, it's all nonsense. I guess that's all you can do, really.
It's silly. From one manager that might go out, though, or theory, which he won't be leaving, obviously, to another who's definitely winning hearts and minds quite quickly, Ange Postecoglou at Spurs. This feeling around that club is seismic shift, and that's the narrative I'm going to say, is that from last season, you wouldn't have thought it's the same club, would you?
No, it's nuts, isn't it?
I mean, you lose, their best player. A lot of Spurs fans I hear saying that was good for them.
Yeah,
and probably good for their system and the way they play under Ange, etc.
Yeah,
but I mean,
you couldn't have written it really last week, could you? I was listening to it, and you kind of knew, I mean, it would have been a complete nightmare for most people's hackers and all that kind of stuff for Sheffield United to win that game. But you kind of knew, listening to what was coming back over the radio, was that they're probably going to do this, and it kind of knew, it was kind of written that Richarlison was going to do it as well. Because of the negative press that had been around him, and that he was having problems and etc. For him to come off the bench and score and get a goal and an assist in the last 2 minutes, I mean, I love stuff like that. That's movie stuff, isn't it? Really. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
you're
mean,
absolutely right. That
last
the club and the feeling around the club is completely different
yeah,
to
and
last
I
season.
think also they're just playing good football, aren't they?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they look like a good team. They look
yeah,
it's really changed my. I think it's changed a lot of fans' opinions. We're only 6 games, as you said, 5 6 games in or whatever, but it really has changed quite a lot of opinions on where they could finish this season.
yeah.
I'm hearing people saying that the way Arsenal aren't really putting their foot to the floor at the moment, they'll be the closest challengers to Man City. I've heard, and some people say, and then others I've heard, say, well, be a bit more,
Well, you ride a wave,
sensible
don't
with it.
you?
I would say, yeah,
It's that kind of honeymoon period of the new manager, and he's got things right. It would seem he's got things right. They've got things right. The stadium is right. There's lots of things that are happening. Okay, Harry Kane left, but that's one player. They brought in quite a raft of good players, and they all seem to be playing with a bit more freedom and a bit more. Like I was saying a couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about Harry Kane leaving, I don't see it as a negative for the club because I feel like it gives the rest of the players a bit more freedom to go and do what they want to do rather than having to focus on getting the ball to Harry Kane or making sure Harry's this, Harry's that. Son getting a hat trick the other week. I know he combined well with Harry Kane, and they were like the best double act in the Premier League a few seasons running. But he's got a bit more freedom. He's now got the opportunity to play up top, and he's obviously going to thrive in that position. But then you've got good quality players coming in behind him. I think the signing of Brennan Johnson is a fantastic signing.
yeah, I do as well.
I think
it's
he
really
will
underrated.
I think he will be a brilliant addition to that team. Give them a bit more depth in those wide areas. I think he'll be fantastic.
Yeah. I think Madison's been signing the season.
Far. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I
mean,
think every club when
Maddison
Leicester got
do,
relegated. Sorry, when Leicester got relegated, I think it was all eyes to see where he was going to go, because that would be key. And I think Tottenham is a perfect fit for him.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah,
it's funny. We asked some of the Spurs fans in our community for comment on what they thought of this game, but they're still in Wonderland, so none of them got to us for this week's podcast. If they come away with another weekend win against Arsenal, I'm sure they'll be in even higher end of Wonderland if there is such a thing. So
is it North London Derby this weekend? Is it?
It is North London Derby this weekend.
Oh yeah, no, I knew that because I took all those players are benched. All Arsenal and Tottenham players are benched in my fantasy team.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm actually going to the Amex with Jack. So so he's going to miss the North London Derby to go see Bournemouth beat Brighton away.
Okay,
hopefully.
okay.
So we're going to have some fun there.
Yeah, that'd be great, mate.
Just another thing that we'll move on to some of the other games quickly. One thing we did have someone come back to us and say something about a team this week. Our Man City resident fan in the community. So the 3-1 win this week, and this is kind of what he had to say.
They won as usual.
Thanks for that, Scott. Really keen insight there into Man City's rolling train as we move on.
Very concise, I think that was.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, even without. It's funny because actually the narrative around that is Haaland's now starting to struggle, which I don't know if he is. He did score again, didn't he?
But we were talking about this in the office today, and I have a strong suspicion that the key to that team moving forward is Alvarez.
Yeah, he has been electric, by the way.
Outstanding, he is.
Just and again, someone I've regretted not having in my fantasy team.
Well, I've had him in since the beginning, my whole fruit.
Yeah, well,
he's been doing
probably
fantastic.
Doing a lot better than me. Yeah.
I had a bad week this week, but no, he's been. I think he got 2 goals, didn't he, yesterday?
Yeah.
In the European game, he just seems to be consistently producing assists, goals. He's always there or thereabouts, and it doesn't matter who he plays around. Him and Haaland obviously have quite a good relationship as well because I think he's been picked every game. I don't think what City are like for rotating players. I think Alvarez has been in the starting 11 for. I think he's been there for all of their games. I might be wrong by that.
He's played. I think he's only one game where he hasn't reached 90 minutes, and he reached and it was an 89. So it's like
there you go.
And in the Premier League, the only thing I will say though is that now they're in the Champions League matches, even though their group is I wouldn't say easy, but there for them obviously it's the case. I still expect them to be rotating a bit, so I don't know if Alvarez is going to play all the Premier League minutes, but
no, possibly
they
not.
do have some injury problems, or at least Pep Guardiola was lamenting injury problems.
Was he? Well, Bernardo was injured, wasn't he? I think he's okay.
Well, I think he just said, I don't know, I just read an article on it today. Basically, Pep Guardiola is saying that they're in trouble, basically, was his quote, with injuries. So
really?
Yeah, I
I find that slightly hard to believe.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got two full 11s. It would be probably win the Premier League between them. So I find that hard to believe. His version of being in trouble and our version of being in trouble are probably two very different things.
It's funny.
Doku looks like a player.
Yeah, yeah. It's only because the whole thing about, then we talk about Haaland. I know we just mentioned him a bit.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, go on.
It's a strange one. I wouldn't never going to write off Haaland and say that he's struggling. I just think that. Do
you think he's been found out a little bit? Do you think teams have worked out the best way to mark him out of the game, make him frustrated?
I think there's an element of that, in that I think that people are just a little more used to him, but I don't think that stops him, and I don't think that's going to stop Man City. And I don't think it's not like Pep won't have thought of this. I think it's just a case of the chances aren't, if he's getting marked out in the game a little bit better, or teams are figuring out even a little bit, it'll just go to someone else. And then this season so far, it's been Alvarez.
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, that if that's just less for Haaland, fine. But that doesn't mean he's not going to get on the end of them. They're going to create enough chances. So.
Yeah, of course.
He just might not score 36 Premier League goals again this season. It might be 30.
Well, that was like something special in it last season. For someone to come in and do that was pretty extraordinary. And I think it was that kind of new boy kind of thing. So fair play to him, I say. Fair play.
Yeah, absolutely. On to some other games, just to run through them. No Jack this week means limited Arsenal discussion.
I know.
Which I'm sure he's not thrilled about. I did ask him to send some audio in, but unfortunately he's away on a jolly holiday.
He's too busy, isn't he? He's having fun on the golf course.
Yeah, indeed. But Arsenal then, 1-0 winners. I didn't see any of this game, and because we've got no Jack, I'm not sure if you saw much of it, Ben. We're just going to brush over it because
I did. No, I did watch. Did I watch? I'm trying to remember. I was the Everton game, wasn't it? Sorry, Arsenal Everton. I did watch it. I did watch bits of it. I'm not a fan of. I'm sorry to any Everton fans out there. I'm not a fan. I'm not a Sean Dyche fan. I'm not a fan of the way that he sets up teams. It's dreadful football for me. So he set out. Fair play to him. He set out his stall to do a certain thing, and he did limit Arsenal to 1 goal.
People still lose though, isn't it? It's just. So.
Well, they still lose. Yeah. And I know what he did at Burnley was a big thing, and he got that club up to Premier League and they yelled a bit, and then he made them kind of a firm established team in the Premier League. But the style of football for me, it's just awful. And I'm not a massive fan of Everton, but I just was like, oh man, I feel a bit sorry for the Everton supporters, to be honest. I wouldn't want Dyche to be in charge of my club. No, and I don't dislike the fellow. I just don't like his style of football. So
yeah, I think a lot of football fans will share that their opinion. But I think for Everton, if it keeps them up, I think this season that'll be fine. Won't it for them? I don't think they'll mind too much.
Do you think they stayed up just last season?
Well, I think they've got to, haven't they? Got a new stadium and all coming. So I just think they could be in real trouble if they get relegated.
Yeah, well, they will be. Yeah, they will be. Anyone who gets relegated is it's big trouble, and you can be languishing down there for decades if you're not careful. So they absolutely don't want to get relegated. But would they class a season as not getting relegated a success? I don't think so. As an Everton fan, I know a few Everton fans, and
yeah, maybe not, but maybe that's
they don't see themselves as a club in a relegation fight. They see themselves as a top half football club, and they should be really historically.
Yeah, but this goes back to the narratives. Historically, fine, but they're not. They're just not there, and they haven't been for 2 or 3 seasons. And so it's a case of
they got some decent players though.
Yeah, they do, but they can't keep their striker fit, their best player fit at all.
No.
And they've just lost Anthony Gordon and Richarlison in the last couple of seasons, who were both good players.
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's enough there, basically. And I'm not saying Dyche is going to do a poor job of it. Even if he does the best job he can, I still don't know if they have enough. And so part of me feels like there should
Are
be
there
an
three
adjustment
worst
of
teams?
expectations.
Are there three worst teams than Everton in the Premier League at the moment? I mean, you'd have to argue that maybe the recently
Luton and
promoted
Sheffield
clubs.
United are probably the two that you would say straight away. But I don't think Burnley are worse than them.
No, I don't think Burnley are worse
So
than them.
Wolves don't look worse than them at the moment. Definitely not. So
No, they're going to be there or thereabouts, aren't they?
Yeah.
If they carry on their current form anyway.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Burnley got their first point of the season, I believe.
Yeah.
Was it the first point against Forest away? So that was a 1-1 draw. And that leaves, by the way, Luton, who lost 1-0 to Fulham. The only team without a point this season so far.
They're just enjoying the ride, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they've been. I mean, for them to get to Premier League, I think is an outstanding achievement for them. And I know a few Luton fans, and they are just over the moon to be there. I think they're just happy. They'll enjoy the ride. They fully expect to get relegated again this season, but do you know what? They just enjoy going to the games and seeing the big teams play, and that's kind of the way you've got to look at it, I think. I always think it would be nice for the smaller clubs to manage to stay up, but it's so hard for them. It's so hard. And do you know what? Even if they yo-yo for a couple of seasons, if they go down again this season, they'll probably be back or thereabouts next season. You know, the teams that have done that in recent years, your West Broms, your Burnleys, your Norwiches, all those teams kind of do it, and then they get, and Bournemouth as well to a degree.
Yeah.
They get a sort of stay of a few more seasons in the Premier League, and that's when you want to try and cement yourself in the Premier League. So I think they'll fully expect to probably bounce a couple of times, but just enjoy the ride. I think that's the most important thing for those sort of clubs.
Yeah, I think the Championship is competitive though. So
oh god,
that's always the whole thing about if you get relegated, it's not even.
No, it's not a given.
It's just
you get
the fact
back
that
up.
it's just the fact that you'll lose some of your better players probably to someone in the Premier League, and then you'll then you've got to fight against some very stiff competition in the Championship.
Yeah, it's nuts. You look at the teams that are in the Championship now. I think they're pretty much all they've all been in the Premier League pretty much, apart from a couple that came up last season. But you look at the top of the Championship now. Preston flying high at the top of the Championship, and Ipswich have only got promoted last season. They're up the top. Those two are at the top. I have to
admit, I don't know much about the Championship, to be honest. I haven't really followed it.
Proper football, mate. That's a proper football league.
Yeah, to be fair, actually, I will say I bet the games in the Championship are pretty damn
it's proper
good.
Football. Yeah.
I probably should watch more Championship football, to be honest.
Definitely.
Very possible. But my team are in the Premier League, so what can I say?
Both of them.
Yeah, both of them, indeed. I should always carry it with both, yeah.
Oh, dear.
So, other games then. Wolves losing 3-1 to Liverpool. It was weird because Wolves were like 1-0 up at half time. They were doing pretty well. And then just capitulated second half. I say that, I think they just sat back and allowed Liverpool to kind of get control.
Yeah.
And then the last one, Villa beat Palace 3-1 as well. It's funny, actually, there were 4 games that ended 3-1 this week in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And 3 more that were 1-0.
Yeah, so, it's funny, isn't it?
Some decent scores
3-1's an interesting scoreline because it's usually the third goal comes kind of because the other team were in the game, and then the second one goes, then they kind of lose their way, and then that third one goes in. That's quite often why 3-1 kicks up. But Villa are a funny one, aren't they? I think Villa are they play some really good football, but then occasionally they just don't turn up. It's odd.
Yeah, it's funny because that apart from the first game of the season against Newcastle, where they were soundly beaten.
Yeah, because they'd had a really good pre-season, hadn't they? They were firing them in left, right, and centre.
Yeah, they've been actually really good since. So
yeah.
I think they're a little inconsistent, but I think that's going to be part of it.
Yeah.
I think they've got Europe, haven't they? Am I wrong? Don't know.
I should know. My cousin's team's Villa. I should know, but I don't.
I think they've got Europe coming up anyway, but which is probably where they might start to struggle.
Yeah,
but they've got some good players anyway, a good squad, and Unai Emery's obviously clearly a very good manager. So they'll have no problems. It's just going to be really, really tough for them to stay near the top. There's just so much competition. So
yeah,
8th, 9th maybe.
Yeah, I would say they'd be quite happy with top 8. I would think.
Yeah. Anything else you want to cover, mate? Otherwise, we'll move on to some fantasy football for the last few minutes. So I know it's Premier League focus. We really should do some other things, cover some Championship.
Yeah, and the lower leagues. Get old Sid on
say,
here. We talk about Swindon. He's a big Swindon fan. He'd tell you all about them.
You mean that's his second team, right? Behind Spurs.
we all have a second team, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I guess you have to if you're in the lower tiers.
you
so
kind of do,
me,
really.
He gets 2 in the top tier.
Oh, you lucky boy.
Yeah, luxury. Wasn't always the case, though, was it? So
no, quite. Yeah. Go on, then. Let's do some fantasy. I'm up for this.
Yeah. So interesting. Poor week all round for quite a few. I think.
Yeah.
It's
Haaland blank, wasn't it? No, he did get a goal.
He did get a point, but he barely. He did got a goal, but he was the only one. Everyone else seemed to blank for me. But really, I'm thinking about looking ahead, what we can do now, because there are some fixture swings. So
yes,
Newcastle in particular are players that I'm looking to target. I've got some really good games coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So mainly defenders is what I look at. I'm a little worried about their attackers. Isak and Wilson are the only 2 I would even consider. And truthfully, because of Champions League now, I'm a little concerned that Isak's going to get benched for the weekend before a Champions League game, which means, or something like that. So I'm not really too kind of focused on Newcastle attackers. I think really it's their defence. And the main thing is they've got a solid kind of fixed defensive setup. So Trippier is the one I would have if I had the money. And I've actually already done my transfers this week because I've been...
So have I.
Yeah, really, which is very strange for me. But I actually have already got Trippier in. Okay. So I got rid of Chilwell. I know that seems silly because of his fixtures, but I got rid of him because he got benched for tactical reasons. It wasn't an injury. And so I'm a little worried about his minutes now. And plus, Chelsea haven't looked absolutely that brilliant, even though they've got some good fixtures. So that might
he's going to play against Villa at home, don't you?
Yeah,
exactly. He's going to score and get an assist and keep.
Yeah, I know, but that's just how it is. I can't, Anyway, so the people I would target, Trippier if you have the money, but Botman's a really good shout.
Yeah.
Botman's probably the one, 4.5, because it allows you to do other things. So Newcastle players in general, yeah. Mm-hmm. Man United players have come up a lot recently because obviously they've been really poor, so people are selling them left, right and centre. I know this might seem biased considering what I've said about Chelsea, and I've started to get rid of them. But I just don't think I can get rid of them before Burnley and then Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
They've got Burnley, Crystal Palace, Brentford, Sheffield United in the next 4.
Yeah.
I just don't think I can. Plus, I might wildcard around when those fixtures are over. So I'm happy to hold. Mm-hmm. Give them a little bit more. Maybe that's biased. Maybe I'll lose out on that. But I think Rashford and Fernandes are a good thing to keep. I wouldn't be looking to get rid of them unless you're really, really certain. Especially now is the next thing I was going to say about Spurs players.
Yeah.
Midfielders in particular, so Son and Maddison.
Mm-hmm.
I would wait now until game week 8 if you're going to get them, if you don't already have them, because they've got Arsenal and Liverpool in the next 2.
Yeah, that's tough.
And then after that, it's really good. So they've got Luton, Fulham, Palace, Chelsea, okay, but Wolves away then. So that's quite good. So I'm looking to get, say, Son or Maddison, and Maddison mainly, but in game week 8. So that's when I'll be looking to get him in. And then things like I've seen a lot of transfers in for some random. So people like, say random. James Ward-Prowse, he's not random, but
he's flying.
Yeah, he is. He is really flying. But unfortunately, they've got Liverpool. Okay, then Sheffield United, but they've got Liverpool, Sheffield United, Newcastle, Villa.
Yeah, tough fixtures. So they seem to be holding their own, West Ham are holding their own. Bowen's a good shout as well. He's done good points so far this season.
Yeah,
West Ham another one.
West Ham assets are okay. They're just not top of my list. And because there's a lot of midfielders to choose from, James Ward-Prowse doesn't really get in there, and same with Bowen at the moment.
Okay.
That's really where it is. Things might change in like game week 9 because then they have Villa, Everton, Brentford, Forest, Burnley, Palace. So things might change then. But right now, with the midfielders I have, I'd rather keep hold of the Man United players than, say, switch to a James Ward-Prowse or keep hold of Saka rather than switch to a James Ward-Prowse. So that's where I'm at the moment. But someone I am really looking for, maybe in the next week or two, is Diaby from Aston Villa. So he's one of my top of my watch list, or Villa players in general. So their fixtures, okay, for the next two aren't great. So this is what I'm saying in the next week or so. They've got Chelsea, Brighton, but then they've got Wolves, West Ham, Luton, Forest, Fulham, all in a row. So again, I know it also gives me a time to just assess when they do Europe, as we were talking about with their Europe and what they look like. So, but he is definitely someone I'm looking at in the next couple of weeks. Now, I said I'd made a transfer.
Yeah.
Alvarez. So he's come in for Jackson. I feel like this could be a bit like getting rid of Chilwell, a bit of a knee jerk. But Chilwell and Jackson have got good fixtures still. So it's not an essential to get rid of them. That's all I would say. People knee jerk about Chelsea. Now I needed the money because I need to I'm looking ahead to like wild carding and if I want to get Salah in, who is probably someone who I'm quite keen on getting when we get to a wild card, I need the extra 0.1 million, that come up. So I had to make moves quickly. Now
there's a good chance he'll miss out on Saturday, because they're playing Forest, aren't they?
With Pep Guardiola talking about injuries being in trouble, I suspect there won't be the same kind of rotation from him, but it is Pep, so I've got to prepare for the idea that he won't play one of them, and probably this weekend being the most likely. So we'll see. So those are the transfers. I took Chilwell and Jackson out for Trippier and Alvarez, which is, by the way, the absolute standard across. If you look on Twitter or anyone who does FPL on YouTube, you'll see everyone talking about those moves.
Right.
Either
did you take a hit or did you have two frees?
No, I had two frees. So
nice.
I wouldn't have taken a hit. I would never have taken a hit. So I would have just chosen one of them if I had the chance, because I had the money to go from Chilwell to Trippier anyway. So I would have just chosen one of them. And to be honest, it probably would have been Trippier, not Alvarez.
I think I've got loads of money in my bank at the moment. I've literally got 3.4 million in my bank.
Save it. You think about it, what you might want to do and get salary if you don't have him.
Well, the reason I've got that is because I had to get rid of. We talked about it last week, but I got rid of Trent this week because he's been injured and there's no guarantee about when he's coming back. So I decided to move him out now and get a Newcastle defender in. And I could have had Trippier, but I went Botman instead.
I mean, saving the money. To be honest, Trippier is not necessarily worth that much of money. It's
I don't think he is.
He's just, I had the money to do it. I know what my plan is moving forward, and it doesn't involve buying someone who's more expensive than I'm currently going to take out.
No.
And then on wildcard, I can make a decision because I can always just change him for Botman.
Yeah.
In a wildcard because it's free. Yeah. So, it was worth it. How did you do in the week anyway?
Not a great week, slightly below average. So 43 points I got. The average is 44, but that's because Estepien didn't play, Chilwell didn't play. Well, he did, but got yellow carded. Sterling did nothing, Foden did nothing, Bowen did nothing. And I actually bought Solomon in from Spurs just because he was cheap and I had to get rid of Enciso because he's out injured. And Solomon had quite a good week the week before, so seemed like quite a lot of football was going through him, and he still might do quite a bit as a good sort of cheap midfielder.
I think he's more of a bench player until such time as
I didn't intend on putting him in, but it's because literally I benched the Brighton players and I had Gabriel on the bench as well. So thankfully Gabriel did play and he came in and got me 5 points, but I had João Pedro on the bench as well, and he didn't come in because all the others played, so sadly I had 7 points on the bench from him. But
maybe needed this week.
I'll definitely so I've had I'm still doing quite well.
I think we'll leave it there.
Okay, mate.
Okay for this week.
Been
really good again to have you on, Ben, and I'm hoping moving forward that we'll have you on a bit more regularly.
Oh, bless you. That's always been nice, and I've really enjoyed it. So thanks for inviting me, and I hope people have enjoyed listening to my dulcet nonsense ramblings over the last few weeks.
The compliments I got about our voices for the last episode, just the send you to sleep is the thing, but I don't think that's what I'm really hoping people will do when they listen. But
that's a worry. You talk so much drivel, you send me to sleep. Oh no, that's good. It's good that people are enjoying it, and I've really enjoyed being here. So thanks so much to you and Jack for having me, and thanks everyone for listening, and keep listening because it's good stuff. There's some good conversations, and you know the feeling and the reasoning behind it all is all very noble. So thanks for having me on, dude.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Well, we're looking to line up some really good guests on in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. Some fantastic success stories in there.
Excellent. Looking forward to it, mate.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate. Have a good week.